Hello everyone and welcome back to the week 14 of my Letterboxd diary. We are doing some random movies this week. I was really curious about some of them and others, well, not so much, but I was still entertained by them. So let's end this intro somehow and start with our first movie. So I finally watched the multiple Oscar-winning Anora, and I gotta be completely honest, I don't get the hype. It's a good movie, I get all that, and I give credits when the credits do, but I don't think Anora quite backs up all of its accomplishments. I don't want to sound like I'm bashing this film because that's not the case, like at all. I enjoyed watching this film. Mikey Madison's portrayal of Honora was solid, the cinematography and the general pacing of the film was on point. It didn't feel like a 2.5-hour movie, which says a lot, but I don't know, I don't get it. It just doesn't feel like a Best Picture and Best Leading Actress Oscar-winning movie. And I seriously say this with all due respect. I can't take anything from the hard work that every single person put in this project, but to me, Honora will be just fine with only getting nominated. And I have to say this, I only talk about those two awards. I'm not against every award that this film won, but that's my 2 cents on it. The film gets a lot more enjoyable when the Russians get integrated in the story. Their comedic timing and behavior when they are interacting with Annie generously helps the movie on being entertaining. As a lead, Annie is built to feel like a complex character as her profession is making her a shameful mistake, and with the way she has to constantly defend herself. And when and how her guard finally drops and she begins to emotionally break down at the end from all the events that she had to endure was touching. Mikey Madison seriously impressed me with her acting. I mean, I already enjoyed watching her on her previous projects like Scream 5 and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But her performance in Honora, especially the one at the end, made me sure of her impressive acting talent. Still, I will much rather Demi Moore win in it. But I'm happy for Mikey, she seriously shines in a movie that requires a bold acting, especially without having an intimacy coordinator on set, which stirs some understandable controversy.
I mean, it's alright, like...
Yeah, that's about it. It was a good spy thriller. Well, it's one of the most famous spy thriller franchises in the whole world, so that was expected, right? What I didn't expect was the plot being main character gets disbanded from the agency and becomes a falsely claimed enemy. I was expecting more of a agency versus greater evil or something like that. This story feels like it could have been used in the later sequels rather than being the starting point. Well, that's what we had though. The effects in this film was definitely top-notch, especially the mask thing that they were using. It's clear that they were showing off with that one. I found the general narration of the film a little lackluster on some parts though, especially when they were breaking into the CIA headquarters. But this always happens in these kind of films, you know? The main character and his crew doing an impossible mission. Wait a second.
Simple game.
The reveal of the plot twist and Ethan figuring out who the mole was a bit confusing to me, and I tried to understand it further after I was done with the film, but I still don't really get it, nor care for it to be completely honest. There's something that intrigued me about this franchise though. At first I wasn't really thinking about watching the rest of the sequels because there are a total of 7 movies and the 8th one is on the way. But what I seen that intrigued me was the metascore of the rest of the films. They mostly get better with each sequel. The IMDb audience score stays fairly consistent. Generally, same thing going on with Rotten Tomatoes too. And on Letterboxd, the average score for the whole franchise hovers around 3.5 stars. So we might do a Mission Impossible themed episode in the future. Okay, now this is a movie that I only watched because I just wanted something to put on without thinking too hard. It's not necessarily a film that I was super curious about, but you know what? I liked it. it had a very fun cast that suited for every major role. Anne Hathaway and Meryl Streep's dynamic throughout the film was indeed attractive to watch. And the way both Emily Blunt and Stanley Tucci's characterizations of their roles were also spot on. They gave off similar vibes to Meryl's Miranda Presley, but added their own flavor. Emily, even though she admires and wants to be like Miranda, is also quietly struggling in the world that she has to work in. She tries to hide her emotions so hard, but how her showing the little glimpses of emotionality was touching. And seeing Nigel being a close comparison to Miranda because he's as developed in this world as her, but also having a more humane personality was also a cool contrast. Nonetheless, this film is super predictable, but here it doesn't hurt the project. It is a good character development and feel-good story that accomplishes what it tries to do perfectly. It doesn't drag or try to force the plot further than it needs to, it just wraps up at the right time. However, after the midpoint, it feels like how Andy's behavior towards Miranda and how she grows an admiration for her gives a similar feeling like Stockholm Syndrome. At the end of the day, Miranda is a successful person at her industry, but that does not mean she's also a good boss. Forming a sympathy for a person like that and basically becoming a leech for her ruling doesn't feel healthy. It's like the film blurs the line between respecting someone's talent and excusing toxic behavior. At least they were acknowledging this aspect of the relationship with Andy's friend group. Still, there's a lot here you can take away as a lesson, both about ambition and knowing where your limits are. Now, this was a film that I was genuinely excited for. I love Bong Joon-ho. I think still, even though he is an acclaimed director and storyteller with multiple Oscar wins for Parasite, he is a bit underappreciated in the grand scheme of things. I think Mickey 17, just like his other films, does a great criticism and commentary on humanity. Here we also see Bong tackling with concepts like immortality and human soul. But as a production, Mickey 17 feels a bit on the nose with these concepts, even though I don't think it doesn't try to be. So I kind of get why some people aren't vibing with it the same way they did with his earlier films. Still, much like Snowpiercer and Memories of Murder, Bong does a great job on adaptive storytelling. The concept of the film instantly vacuums you in, and the amazing cast holds you in with a tight grip. Robert Pattinson, for me, and I think for a lot of people, is one of the best actors of our generation. His range is impeccable, and I hope we see him in more award discussions, because he much deserves it. The difference he can show with Mickey 17 and 18 felt like two different actors playing against each other. Not just with their mannerisms, but also how they look. Even though they look exactly the same, he managed to make them look a lot different. My only problem with Mickey Barnes was until the introduction of 18, all the other Mickeys felt exactly the same. But right after 18, we immediately forced to believe every single one was different than one another. At some point, they tell us this through Nasha, where she says Mickey 1 was like this, 2 was like that, and so on. I found that a little bit lazy. We could have seen these character differences between every Mickey rather than verbally explained to us. But the film doesn't give them enough screen time for us to see that, so we have to learn these facts through one quick line. I want to give a huge shout out to Mark Ruffalo though. With basically back-to-back roles, he showed us how great of a range he has as an actor, with his portrayals of Duncan Wedderburn in Poor Things and as Kenneth Marshall in Mickey 17. I don't really care if he does a Donald Trump impression here or not, but most definitely he shines in this role. I hope he gets his well-deserved recognition. This is visually one of the most ambitious work of Bong to me, at least since Okja and Snowpiercer. Some can put the host in this dialogue too, but that movie just puts an alien-esque creature to a regular world. What I'm getting at without steering further is, visually Mickey 17 looks incredible for the most part. That said, around the end where Mickeys are standing among the army of creepers, sometimes those creatures looked a bit flat to me, a bit green screeny. It's okay though, this is just a little bit of nitpicking on my part. Overall, I really enjoyed Mickey 17 and I'm definitely looking forward to reading the novel it's based on, Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton. Well, after all that Snummatalk bullshit, it's time to watch a real movie. A real movie for the boys. With all jokes aside, The Beekeeper does everything a crappy action movie is supposed to do. Stupid scenes that makes you question filmmaking, bad dialogue, and of course, great action scenes. The Beekeeper is basically John Wick, but imagine John Wick rather than getting his dog killed. This time your elderly neighbor commits suicide for losing everything because she got scammed by Data Miner bros. Anyway, Jason Statham goes after them, burns the place down and brings havoc to everywhere he goes. It feels like he plays this game in ultra easy mode. It was amazingly stupid. I enjoyed every minute of it. I believe sometimes we need these kind of movies to both empty our minds and also appreciate greater cinema. Like seriously, if I was doing an analysis video for movies, The Beekeeper would be my bread and butter. It is super easy to point out every negative thing in this film, but those things are also what makes this type of movies entertaining. And that's all folks. It was a very relaxing week for me in case of video making. I really missed watching random movies and I'm planning to doing these type of videos for a bit. But who knows, all of a sudden I just might do another themed episode, so we shall see. We are nearing to complete 70% of our 100 movies challenge, hopefully accomplished by next week. So that's another update for whoever wants to know. Thank you so much for sticking until the end. Liking and subscribing is always much appreciated. I'm glad you're here and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.